All right, welcome to Mastering Conclusion Paragraphs. In this lesson, you will learn to understand how to integrate multiple perspectives into a conclusion, enhance conclusions using advanced rhetorical devices, and practice revising and editing for clarity, coherence, and impact. Here's some key terms and concepts for a conclusion paragraph. First, what is a conclusion? It's the final paragraph of an argumentative essay that restates the thesis and summarizes your key points. In the conclusion paragraph, you need to be able to restate the thesis, rephrase your thesis to reinforce your argument. You need to summarize key points, briefly highlight your strongest points without repeating the body paragraphs, and you need to have a call to action at the end. That's a final thought that encourages reflection or action from the reader. So, what is the role of the conclusion? In the conclusion, you need to restate your thesis, remind the reader of your main argument in a new way. You need to summarize your key points, recap the strongest parts of your argument, and you need to leave a lasting impression. The conclusion should make your reader reflect on your argument and its importance. Here are some famous speeches with powerful conclusions. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. MLK ends with the passionate call for freedom and equality, invoking hope for a better future. His conclusion remains one of the most iconic moments in American history with the phrase, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Lincoln's conclusion reinforces the idea that the nation must dedicate itself to ensuring that the government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. Lincoln says that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. John F. Kennedy's inaugural address from 1961. Kennedy's conclusion includes that famous line, you've all heard it before, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. This rallying cry has become a key moment in American rhetoric. And Winston Churchill's We Shall Fight on the Beaches from 1940. Churchill ends his speech with the resolve to fight and never surrender, no matter what the cost. We shall never surrender, Churchill says. Let's look at task 1 on your handout, analyzing MLK's dream speech conclusion. This is the last paragraph of I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King Jr. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands in singing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Here's what I want you to do. We just read that last paragraph, Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream. Now, on your handout, answer these questions. How does MLK restate his thesis or core message? What key points from earlier in the speech does he emphasize in the conclusion? What emotional appeal does MLK use to inspire the audience? And how does he use repetition to strengthen his conclusion? You'll have 5 minutes to complete this task. Go. Okay, let's see what you got. On restatement of the thesis, MLK reaffirms his vision of racial equality and freedom, emphasizing that true freedom will only be achieved when justice and brotherhood prevail for all people, regardless of race or religion. This is what MLK writes. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to climb up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. Notice there's a lot of repetition and parallelism in there too. He also emphasizes key points. Here, in the conclusion, MLK reinforces his earlier points about justice, racial equality, and the unity of all people. The recurring theme of freedom is emphasized, highlighting the necessity of equality for all Americans. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I will go back to the south with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. Here, in this excerpt, the metaphor of every valley shall be exalted and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed reinforces the idea of equality and justice for everyone, making this a key part of his reaffirmation and emphasis of the thesis. Under emotional appeal, MLK evokes deep emotions of hope, freedom, and justice. He uses religious imagery and the concept of divine justice to stir the hearts of his audience, motivating them to believe in the righteousness of his cause. He says, I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I will go back to the south with. With this faith, we'll be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. In these lines, King invokes religious imagery, particularly the reference to the glory of the Lord and faith, to appeal to the audience's sense of hope and moral righteousness. The imagery of mountain of despair and stone of hope further connects the struggle for justice to a larger divine purpose. King's use of this religious imagery seeks to inspire faith and emotional engagement, motivating his audience to believe in the righteousness of the civil rights cause and the inevitable victory of justice. He uses repetition. MLK employs the repeated phrases, let freedom ring and free at last, to underscore the significance and urgency of the message. This repetition emphasizes the long-awaited fulfillment of freedom and the joy of achieving justice. Let freedom ring is repeated across multiple locations and settings, and the phrase free at last is repeated at the end. This repetition emphasizes the significance of freedom and the urgency of the message. It underscores the long-awaited dream of freedom, highlighting that it will be achieved through perseverance and unity. It conveys the joy and relief that comes with achieving justice and freedom, particularly when MLK repeats free at last in the final moments. The repetition here functions not only as a call to action, but also as an emotional appeal, reinforcing the hope for a just and equal future. Now, let's move on to task 2. Analyze MLK's Birmingham jail conclusion. Read the conclusion of the letter from Birmingham jail. I hope this letter finds you strong in the faith. I also hope that circumstances will soon make it possible for me to meet each of you, not as an integrationist or a civil rights leader, but as a fellow clergyman and a Christian brother. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. Yours for the cause of peace and brotherhood, Martin Luther King Jr. Now, what I want you to do on your handout is complete the following: restate MLK's thesis, summarize his key points, and write his call to action. Again, you'll have 5 minutes to work on this task. Go. Okay, let's see how you did. The first task was to restate the thesis. In his conclusion, MLK restates his core message about the necessity of immediate action. He emphasizes that justice cannot be delayed and that action must follow words in the fight against injustice. He reinforces that the time for justice is always now, not later. King writes, "We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Justice too long delayed is justice denied. This time is always right to do what is right." You were to summarize his key points. MLK summarizes his key ideas like the moral imperative of justice, the urgency of confronting racial inequality, and the sacrifice and courage of those in the civil rights movement. He mentions the heroes of the movement and emphasizes the importance of nonviolent resistance. King writes, "One day the South will recognize its real heroes. They will be the James Merediths, with the noble sense of purpose that enables them to face jeering and hostile mobs, and with the agonizing loneliness that characterizes the life of the pioneer. There will be 300 old, oppressed, battered Negro women, symbolized in a 72-year-old woman in Montgomery, Alabama, who rose up with a sense of dignity and with her people decided not to ride segregated buses, and who responded with ungrammatical profundity to one who inquired about her weariness. 'My feet is tired, but my soul is at rest.' There will be the young high school and college students, the young ministers of the gospel, and a host of their elders courageously and nonviolently sitting in at lunch counters and willingly going to jail for conscience sake." And you were to find his call to action. King's final call to action encourages his audience to reflect on their moral responsibility to confront racial injustice. He uses repetition to emphasize the need for immediate action and moral commitment. His message is clear: the fight for justice must be continuous, and the time for change is now. King writes, "I hope this letter finds you strong in the faith. I also hope that circumstances will soon make it possible for me to meet each of you, not as an integrationist or a civil rights leader, but as a fellow clergyman and a Christian brother. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty." Now for task 3. This is your metacognitive reflection practice. Today, I want you to reflect on what you learned about writing strong conclusions in your writing. Consider how analyzing MLK's conclusion helps you understand the key elements of a powerful closing argument. These are some questions to guide your reflection. What did you find challenging about writing your conclusion today? How did analyzing MLK's conclusion in Letter from Birmingham Jail help you improve your own approach to conclusions? What strategies will you use in your future essays to write stronger, more impactful conclusions? Take some time to reflect on these questions in your journal or on this page. Write down your thoughts and any insights you gain from the lesson today. Be sure to focus on how analyzing MLK's conclusion influenced your understanding of the elements that make a conclusion powerful and effective. You'll have 5 minutes to work on this one. Ready? Go.